tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Hockey Canada really was out of step with the times, really misread the expectations that stakeholders had of it.
Feeling the pressure, the entire Hockey Canada board steps aside. The disappointment from BC over why it didn't come sooner.
The smell was awful. You came out of the shower feeling dirty.
Plus, how construction on the Site C Dam has led to months without drinking water for one BC community.
This brown marmorated stink bug is a bad stink bug.
And they're stinky, but even worse, they're invasive. Why these critters have experts warning.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. We begin tonight with an emotional day in BC Supreme Court as Coquitlam teen Amanda Todd's parents delivered their victim impact statements. As Renee Filipponi reports, it was the first day of the sentencing hearing for the Dutch man who abused Todd for years.
Amanda Todd's family arrived at court for the start of the sentencing hearing of Dutch national Aiden Coban, with expectations and hopes for justice. On day one, Crown Counsel went through details about how Coban harassed and extorted Amanda Todd, going back to his first interaction with her when she was just 12 years old. Coban was found guilty in a unanimous jury verdict earlier this year of extortion, harassment, and possession and distribution of child pornography. The Crown says he contacted Todd online and eventually used provocative pictures of her to sextort her into doing acts on webcam and then shared some of those visuals online. Crown lawyers say Coban should serve 12 years for his crimes, calling his online stalking calculated, callous, and with devastating consequences. This weekend marked 10 years since Todd took her life at just 15 years old. Her parents read victim impact statements in the court. Her father, Norm, saying it's hard to put into words how it feels to lose a child, especially in a way that is diabolically aggravating and completely preventable. Her mother, Carol, spoke about the milestones Amanda will never see, and that it's her voice we must continue to use, as she was the one that made the world acutely aware of the atrocities that happened to her.
I hope that he heard about how it felt for me to see what Amanda had gone through with the trauma of what had happened to her between 2009 and early 2012, and ultimately didn't think that it was worth living.
Before his extradition to Canada, a Dutch court sentenced Coban to nearly 11 years for fraud and blackmail involving 39 victims, some of them young girls. He has been in custody since 2014. The Crown says if he is returned to the Netherlands, which is likely, it will be up to a Dutch court to determine how this new Canadian sentence will be converted and whether the two sentences will be served concurrently or consecutively. The hearing is scheduled to last most of the week. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, New Westminster.
And tonight, a major development in the Hockey Canada saga. Growing outrage has now led to the resignation of the entire board of directors over the organization's handling of sexual assault allegations. The federal government says this serves as a warning to other groups.
I'm going to review the entire funding system. So all the organizations that receive federal funding are going to have higher expectations in regards to governance, transparency, prevention of abuse and maltreatment in sport.
This follows the resignation of Andrea Skinner as interim chief of the board 3 days ago. The upheaval started in May when it was revealed Hockey Canada had paid a settlement to a woman who claimed she was sexually assaulted by 8 junior players in 2018. It's recently been revealed that the organization maintained a fund that paid for uninsured liabilities, including sexual assaults and abuse claims. That fund was maintained in part by minor hockey registration fees. Prime Minister Trudeau is applauding the changes at Hockey Canada.
Well, I think seeing the entire board and the CEO step down is an important step forward, but there's a culture to change. There is an awful lot of work to ensure that the structures and systems that Hockey Canada has in place protects employees, protects Canadians, protects our kids as they play hockey. There's work to do to transform the culture at Hockey Canada, but today was an important first step.
Now, BC's hockey community is reacting to that news today. As a member of the national organization, BC Hockey says it's been calling for the change. But as Leanne Young reports, local players and participants say they're disappointed their call for action took so long.
Hitting the ice is ritual for these young players and their coach. But what's happened at Hockey Canada has shaken everyone to their core.
Basically every program, including minor hockey, is connected through Hockey Canada. And those are who you're kind of looking for leadership and advice and support.
Hart believes the national leaders should have stepped down sooner, and BC Hockey should have disassociated from the national organization with a strong statement, much like its counterpart did in Quebec, Ontario, and the Maritimes.
It's gone on long enough that everyone else has said something. You should probably come out and say something.
6 days ago, BC Hockey released a statement that was short and vague, reading in part that they continue to monitor the challenges in our game and all of the developments of the recent months. It drew outrage from the hockey community.
Didn't take the stand of some people and call for the resignation of the board. They were going to monitor the situation, and I thought they could have taken a bigger step and made a bigger statement, but they chose not to.
Today came an open letter clarifying its position, coming after the resignations at Hockey Canada. Board Chair Stephanie White says they're in dialogue with the national organization. We put forth our opinion that there should be a change in leadership at Hockey Canada in the best interest of our game to move forward. White also addressed recent calls from angry participants to stop paying fees to Hockey Canada. But she says rather than be reactive, they are still considering options. Fees aren't due till mid-November. Experts say the whole debacle holds a lesson for everyone.
Sometimes in hindsight, you think, how were these missteps possible? How were leaders blind to these issues? And having a more diverse leadership can really help.
A shift at the top of hockey that will hopefully be the change the sport needs.
If there's no repercussions and people aren't being reprimanded for situations, they just continue to happen.
Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
All right, a bit of a warning for you now to keep an eye out for fragrant invaders. Reports of brown marmorated stink bugs are on the rise. I actually spotted one yesterday on my window. The province has issued a pest warning declaring the stink bugs a public nuisance. Native to Asia, they're easy to spot. They're small, marbled, and triangular, and they release a foul stench when crushed. More of the pests are being found as fall rolls out, and the bugs look for a warm place to spend the winter. The small insect is a growing problem across the province, posing a big threat to fruit and vegetable crops.
There's more than 100 plants that the stink bug will feed on. So we're really worried about it because if it shows up in high numbers, our tree fruit industry, our grape industry, our vegetable industry, all the things that we grow here, these stink bugs can feed on them.
With established populations in Metro Vancouver and the Okanagan, officials now are asking people to stop reporting sightings and just squish the bugs on site. Or for a less smelly option, catch them in traps filled with soapy water. Well, it's been a rough couple of months for people living in Hudson's Hope, BC. Forced from their homes because of wildfires, they returned to find no drinking water because the Peace River is being disturbed by Site C dam construction. As Kate Partridge tells us, the BC Hydro-funded fix isn't working.
Residents in Hudson's Hope remember well the day the water changed.
As soon as we switched over to the well system, we were having issues with the smell, the need for superchlorination, just a plethora of issue after issue after issue.
But that wasn't the worst of it. Soon, things took a turn.
It was brown, coming out brown in a lot of people's homes, especially down in the town. The smell was awful. You came out of the shower feeling dirty. Yeah, it was kind of a nightmare.
And then in August, the community was issued a do not consume order, which remains in place. It was the final straw for Caitlin Vince. She helped start the Hudson's Hope Water Recovery Committee.
We were formed to help pressure BC Hydro to help fix our water situation in Hudson's Hope.
Prior to 2020, Hudson's Hope got its water directly from the Peace River. But that changed when BC Hydro started building a berm. It's to protect the community from erosion that may result from rising water levels once the Site C reservoir starts filling. So now the community uses a well system. They were told by experts, brought in by the district and paid for by BC Hydro, that this would provide clean and abundant water. But that didn't turn out to be the case. The District of Hudson's Hope says they are in conversation with BC Hydro about an alternative to the well system. In the meantime, residents are being provided bottled drinking water.
This is what we are doing right now, is strictly a short-term solution to get to potable water. The long-term solution is to look for an alternative source, and we're looking at different options right now.
Site C Community Engagement Coordinator Bob Gammer says the utility is open to talking about alternatives, but focusing on getting the water treatment facility back up and running.
So we will continue to work to support the District of Hudson's Hope to get the system that is in place now operating properly.
For now, residents are told to wait on a new source of clean water that was once so abundant. Kate Partridge, CBC News, Hudson's Hope.
Well, when you think about Vancouver's music scene, what comes to mind? Hip-hop probably isn't the genre most people think of, but that is changing. Maurice Katz sat down with 4 prominent hip-hop artists from Vancouver to look at the evolving industry.
All right, do you want to just start going from the top and start punching in block by block?
Yeah, exactly.
You know we out here, I'm out to take you all home, we just can't stop that.
The beautiful thing about the city is that it fosters originality, and I think a lot of artists like coming from here, they have this like ability to just come up with something like brand new that has never been done before.
You could put your hands up, baby, if you want it. Hard times got you doing all.
K-pop is one of many Vancouver hip-hop artists hustling to make it in the music industry. For decades, Canadian hip-hop had 2 poles, Toronto and Vancouver. But today, if you ask anybody about the Canadian hip-hop scene, the conversation begins and ends at Toronto.
Like for instance, like I can sell like 2,000 tickets in Lithuania, God knows why, which is great, I love it. But I can barely sell 1,000 tickets here. And it's like, it's interesting because like I'm a local act, but it's like I really haven't deemed myself as a local act. Because back in the day, I think it's like, you know, it would have been way more like traditional to blow up in the city and then have the city rep you and then you go elsewhere. But I don't know. I mean, it's all work in progress.
I really don't think anyone's repping Vancouver that hard.
Yeah,
like,
that too.
Really, like no one's like, and there. I mean, there's no Drake. There's no like, this is my city.
You do a show in ATL and it's like all they do, the whole crowd is screaming ATL, ATL, and I'm like, all right, well, yeah. I wish we had like VAN, VAN.
The Canadian hip-hop scene is synonymous with a singular figure, Drake. Because of him, Toronto is now one of the global heavyweights in the hip-hop world.
We need Drake too.
Yeah.
Let's make Drake too. Vancouver.
Eric, it's your time. You gotta be Drake too.
Drake too.
I don't think you can become Drake by like being like, I'm gonna be Drake. You know what I mean? That's like a lot of pressure to put on a person.
You think?
Did the math. I'm baby Johnny Cash. My girl gon' throw it back. That my life is cinemax.
Get this. I was in Halifax, and the municipality put on a show and puts on a show every single Friday and Saturday for 16 weeks, and it's completely funded by the government, and it's just like exposing the audience and the community to cool music. And I was like blown away. I was like, Halifax has this? Like, why? Like, why are we buying golden bears and not investing in like culture?
Jumping out of whip, shit cold. Watching my step gram froze. Most my day spent alone. Same with my bro, he knows.
All 4 of these artists are independent, meaning they don't have the financial backing of a record label. And the challenges of finding their own path towards success in Vancouver can be daunting.
If you want to like network and like meet other artists, meet other like people in the industry, I think LA, New York, and like other places in like the States is probably like the best bet, even like Toronto. You know what I mean? But like just because the scene, there's no like labels here, there's no like network of like established groups of people. You know, like there are, but there's not many.
It's like the same like 4 venues that people play at or whatever, and just like
probably less now because they all closed.
I'm a spray dead, money running thin, I'm really banking on my.
Do you feel like the hip hop scene in Vancouver could be better to kind of bring up more young artists?
making studio time more affordable would probably help quite a bit. Like, I mean, that's why everyone records with like USB microphones, right? Like no one can come here and use this stuff.
It's not even the studio space. I feel like the people there, you need to pay people to be in these positions of power for people to come in and like do the thing and make it affordable for artists.
I don't mean to be rude, but dang, you looking good like you. He 102. You.
The greatest artists we know, it's like, did they have like a bunch of money? No, they were like slanging or like had like some label or something behind them. So if you want to find like the unique, you know, like the diamonds in the city, you can't just make it accessible for a very select few, you know?
Feel that cup. Wow.
All right, sounds pretty clean.
Okay, Johanna is off tonight, and this is perfect because our resident DJ is here, Kuljeet. I don't know, you know, I think the problem with Vancouver is it's a no-fun city, right? It's going to be pretty tough.
I mean, there's so much talent in just those 4 individuals there. We need more labels. We maybe need Drake to come by and start up, you know, some sort of build a house here, Drake. Come on, do us a favor.
You heard it right here on CBC Vancouver.
Yes.
Okay, well, from hip hop to weather, what's happening with our systems right now?
And that's the other big plus is our weather is very much like LA right now, so we can really pretend. We have a high ridge pressure that has come back. We had a cool down yesterday with the winds. It has come back. All it's really bringing is some fog overnight and then clear conditions throughout the day. Currently outside right now, up to 13 degrees at the airport, 12 on the North Shore, 16 in Pitt Meadows. We had some really great highs across BC today, above seasonal for Whistler even. Usually around 12.8, we hit 18 degrees. What you need to know this week is our warmest day is going to be on Thursday. 25 degrees is our high inland. Next chance of rain is Tuesday, and I'll get into details from the 7-day forecast coming up.
All
Anita?
right, thanks, Kuljeet. We'll talk to you soon. Affordable housing and crime, among other things. After the break, we talk to our political panel. Stick with us. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. A new hair trend has hit corporate boardrooms in St. John's. Now, some top executives from Newfoundland's energy companies volunteered to shave their heads. It's part of a long-running fundraiser for Young Adult Cancer Canada.
All right. Clippers are coming. Now, you can start those clippers and get it going. Personal choice how you want to do this, and you go at it however you feel comfortable. Look, oh yeah, she's starting from the back. Adair is right down the middle, no bones about it. This is the time, let me tell you, that there's no way to back out. Huge round of applause for these shavers up here today. Amazing.
What do you think of your new look?
You know, I haven't really looked at it yet, so it's a bit of a mystery up there, to be honest.
You want me to turn the viewfinder around so you can see yourself?
Yeah, actually, let's do that. Turn it around.
Here we go. There you go.
Yeah, kind of like let's go with Bruce Willis.
I like that, very Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
I haven't really seen it yet.
Okay, you ready for a big reveal?
What's that? Yeah.
I'm going to turn the viewfinder around so you can see yourself. Here we go. What do you think?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Manageable. It's manageable. In the context of what we're dealing with here, it's manageable.
All right, there you go. Take a good look. What do you think?
It's a different person, so I wonder what my wife would say. I have a very good explanation, so it's very easy for me to talk about the good purpose of doing this.
How do you think this new look will go over at the next board meeting?
Pretty good, I think. Most of those guys bald themselves, so yeah, it should be fine.
All right, in Chilliwack, a controversial Chilliwack School Board trustee is having his day at the Supreme Court of Canada. Barry Neufeld is suing the former president of the BC Teachers Federation, Glenn Hansman, for defamation. Hansman said Neufeld tiptoed into hate speech when he publicly criticized provincial plans to teach children about gender identity. Neufeld says that violated his right to free speech. A lower court originally gave Neufeld's lawsuit the green light to continue, but Hansman successfully petitioned Canada's top court to take the case. Now it will decide whether or not the defamation suit can proceed. Neufeld is seeking re-election this coming Saturday as a school board trustee. Okay, the race for mayor of Vancouver is, of course, heating up. Now the firefighters union is getting involved, endorsing incumbent Kennedy Stewart. The union is also hitching its wagon to council candidates from several other parties. All but 2 candidates endorsed are incumbents, with Melissa DeGenova being the only councillor seeking re-election who hasn't got the support of the union. This all comes after the Vancouver Police Union broke with tradition of neutrality, endorsing mayoral hopeful Ken Sim. Okay, with that, the election night, of course, is fast approaching, and advance voting already happening in some municipalities. It can be challenging to keep up with the daily campaign announcements and the latest candidate pledges. To help us break through all of the noise, I'm joined by our election panel. Ginger Gosnell-Myers is an Indigenous Fellow at SFU's Centre for Dialogue, and Andy Yan is the Director of SFU's City Program. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you.
And of course, you'll both be here on election night as well. Yes. But for today, you know, we've been seeing a lot of misinformation in this campaign, a lot of misleading claims. It seems like it's more than we've seen in the past. Ginger, why do you think that is?
I mean, we're seeing a lot of misleading claims coming up in politics in general around the world. It's really disappointing to see that come down to Vancouver. I think this is a place where we think that we're a lot better than having to resort to, I think, lies or misleading claims. We've heard some ridiculous things coming out of some of the candidates' mouths over the course of this campaign, Fred Harding talking about how he wants to bring back the NBA. It's not something that he can actually do. Ken Sim, keeps talking about how Kennedy Stewart is going to implement a road tax that was never agreed upon. And even Kennedy Stewart talking about how Ken Sim is going to cut $300 million in services. I think these are things that go above and beyond, what people should be expecting from politicians at this point. It's disappointing to say the least. It also shows that they really don't know their communities if they're having to resort to half-truths or lies.
And Andy, I just want to ask you about that quickly as well. Why do you think it's happening more this election?
Well, I think that it's perhaps some folks who don't necessarily understand the role of local government, how local government is in certain ways the phytoplankton as opposed to the orca in the role of government in Canada, and for which it certainly has certain strengths, but yet it also is limited. It has its own kind of constraints. And I think that is one of the kind of big challenges in terms of acknowledging those constraints, but yet also understanding what you can do as a prospective mayor, much less a mayor who's going to have to work with 10 other council members. So I think that it all comes together towards really actually a measure of, do people understand what the job is and really what needs to be done.
You know, Ginger talked a lot about Vancouver, but, the second biggest city in this province, of course, is Surrey. We're not getting any polling out of that city. What are your predictions? What are you thinking about the campaign so far?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, because simply Surrey is 3 times the size of the city of Vancouver. It has a population that is well on track towards exceeding the population size of the city of Vancouver, and yet we know surprisingly little in terms of its dynamics. We know that, at least through the census, it is within the fastest growing populations in Canada, mixed in with one of the youngest, certainly a very large urban Indigenous community, a sizable immigrant community whose English may not be its primary language, their primary language. I think all for which culminates into a city that is on the up but yet changing. And really, the question is whether its politics will match that type of change.
And just before we let both of you go, throughout the province, there's a lot of talk about crime and safety, but we know everywhere that housing is such an important issue. Ginger, why are we seeing so much talk about crime rather than housing?
We see crime come to the forefront of a lot of political campaigns when I think they're grasping at straws and really trying to set themselves above other candidates. Crime is definitely an issue for some neighborhoods. It's not as citywide as we perhaps would be led to believe. And it also gets people's attention. You know, we feel a lot of empathy for people who are victims of crime, for small businesses that are victims of consistent crimes against, you know, their properties. But is that a significant enough issue to really dominate the election discourse that we see right now? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of other issues that we could be talking about beyond crime.
But yet that doesn't seem to be the case, and it's not just Vancouver. It really is far-reaching that, you know, crime and safety is the #1 thing. Andy, what do you think about that?
I think that part of this is really how it isn't necessarily about data, but it's about vibe. And I think that this is going to be one of those elections where I think the successful candidate is one who can give a sense that they can change the vibe of the city. I think that we are, respective communities, living in an age of anxiety and really trying to find that leader or the group of leaders that can really lead us into a better vibe for where we live is perhaps one of the things we'll see on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think everyone wants a better vibe where they live. Ginger, Andy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
On election night, be sure to tune in to CBC Vancouver for our live special on TV, radio, and online. We'll have in-depth analysis and up-to-the-minute results coverage across the province. Reporters will be there bringing you the latest news live from candidate headquarters. Of course, it all starts at 7 p.m. on October 15th and will continue throughout the evening. Well, another round of attacks in Ukraine as Russia continues to hammer its western neighbor. That attack comes at a cost for Vladimir Putin. We take you to the front lines next.
Investors, stock promoters, brokers, they're all saying the same thing about Vancouver's stock exchange these days. They're saying the thrill is gone. 19 straight losses in Vancouver's stock index and a 3-year record that's not much better. Critics say the VSE's colorful reputation may finally be catching up to it. Ian Hannamansing has that story.
Everyone who watches stocks on the Vancouver Exchange is used to a roller coaster ride. But these days, the VSE seems headed in only one direction, straight down.
This one's more prolonged than other lousy markets that I've seen. This one's lasting a long time.
The VSE index is a gauge of how stocks are performing on the market. 3.5 years ago, the index was over the 2,000 mark. During the crash of October '87, it plummeted to about 1,500. But while major markets around the world rebounded, the VSE continued to slump. And today, another in a string of record lows, 587. Some brokers admit these are tough times for people who deal with the VSE.
Using the car a little bit less and pinching pennies a little bit more and vacationing closer to home, things like that.
Many market watchers say that part of the reason for this slump is that the most important promoter on the VSE is in limbo. Last year, Murray Pezim single-handedly created a small boom on the exchange. Now he faces a possible ban from trading after allegations he broke securities regulations. But longtime critics say the record lows are due to more than the fate of one man. They say it's the result of a rotten reputation, of weak securities rules and poor enforcement.
It's a recognition that for years the VSE has been offering the public investor a lousy product and they've just stopped buying.
The stock exchange says it's worked very hard to clean up that image, but it may be about to get battered once again. Tomorrow night, an American television network is planning to air what's being described as an expose of shady actions by some promoters on the exchange. It's a telecast that many people here are waiting for anxiously. Ian Hannamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
air raid warning sounded across Ukraine again as the country was subjected to a second day of intensified attacks by Russia. Cities as far west as Lviv are being affected, but as Briar Stewart reports, it's the eastern and southern regions that continue to take the brunt of the onslaught.
Once again, the city of Zaporizhia pummeled by Russia's firepower. A dozen missiles struck the city Tuesday, killing at least 7. This after an even more intense barrage Monday. Many rushed to shelter underground or seek safer cities altogether. Tatiana Shahovska is sending her daughters to western Ukraine because Zaporizhia has become too dangerous. It's very bad. I want to burst out crying, but we need to do this. At this time, it's safer there. On the same platform, another tearful goodbye. A soldier going back to the front line. Over the past 2 days, Russia has fired more than 100 cruise missiles into Ukraine, targeting civilian infrastructure like water and electricity after an attack over the weekend on the bridge to Crimea and weeks of Russian failures on the battlefield. In northern Kherson, Ukraine has taken back several hundred square kilometers since the beginning of October. Some Ukrainian soldiers who fought to liberate villages can now take a short break, enjoy some borscht, and clean out weapons. But the fighting hasn't stopped. So how would you describe just the way the Russians
don't care. It's good. It's not for our souls.
He means that's Ukraine firing south towards the Russian soldiers who withdrew so rapidly that he was even surprised.
I can't understand why are they retreating so fast and unorganized.
Russian trenches lie abandoned, so do tanks. Fields are littered with casings from cluster bombs. The reprieve means that some villagers have returned. So you're down here? Viktor Kopychok says Russian soldiers accused him of conspiring with the Ukrainian military. They locked him in here every night for 3 weeks. He says he was interrogated and burned with a hot poker. I can't describe what I've been through. Maybe there were normal people amongst them, but there are also those sadists, simply sadists. The soldiers may be gone from here, but Russia hasn't given up on Kherson. It has proclaimed this area as its own and has vowed to keep fighting for it. Briar Stewart, CBC News in North Kherson.
Now, Canada is offering more support to the Ukrainian war effort. In Poland today, Defense Minister Anita Bathe announced the Canadian military will provide personnel to help train Ukrainian fighters.
Canada will deploy approximately 40 combat engineers to Poland to help Polish forces train Ukrainian sappers on engineer reconnaissance, explosives, mining, and demining.
Canada has trained more than 33,000 Ukrainian troops. Anand says today's announcement will complement other training that Canada has already provided to Ukrainian forces in the UK. The minister also condemned the Russian escalation of the war, calling the attacks war crimes. Now, members of the G7 have pledged to stand firm with Ukraine as long as needed. The world's leading industrial economies held an emergency meeting today with the president of Ukraine. The G7 condemned Russia's escalation of its assault on Ukraine. And as Abby Kugadasan reports, it's committed to ongoing financial, humanitarian, military, diplomatic, and legal support for Kyiv.
Нуль прибутку для держави-терориста.
Joining a virtual G7 meeting, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for fresh sanctions to be imposed on Russia, and he ruled out the possibility of engaging in talks with President Putin. Zelensky urged that an international mission be set up along his country's border with Belarus, concerned Moscow will pull Minsk into the conflict. He also asked his allies to urgently supply his country with the air defense weapons it needs to stop Russia. U.S. President Joe Biden had already promised on Monday to deliver advanced air defense systems, but it's not clear whether Washington's pledge is new or part of a previous package. The Pentagon will ship 2 systems in November. Zelensky's request comes one day after the Kremlin launched more than 80 missiles into various parts of Ukraine. Ukraine says the Russian military was targeting energy infrastructure and civilians. Forbes estimates that the Kremlin spent between $400 and $700 million on Monday's attacks. This as the Russian military struggles on the battlefield. Ukrainian counteroffensives have taken back large areas of land in the past several weeks. And a rare public statement today from Britain's cyber intelligence chief, Jeremy Fleming. He says there is no indication at this time that Moscow is preparing to deploy nuclear weapons, but he did say the Russian military is in a desperate state.
Well, we believe that Russia is running short of munitions. It's certainly running short of friends. And we've seen, because of the declaration for mobilization, that it's running short of troops. So I think the answer to that is pretty clear. Russia and Russia's commanders are worried about the state of their military machine.
Fleming also said his agency believes the Russian people are beginning to realize that President Putin has misjudged his military activity in Ukraine. Abby Cuevas in CBC News, London.
Violence has rocked Iran as anti-government protests continue following the death of a woman in police custody. Video provided by a European-based human rights organization appears to show an intensified effort by the regime to crack down on protesters. Demonstrations are taking place across the country. Unrest started after Mahsa Amini died in the custody of the country's morality police last month. And starting today, many Ontario employers will be required to have an electric monitoring policy. As Anita Bathe reports, they'll be required to inform their employees about it as well.
Anytime you're using a work device, your boss could be watching.
It's technically like being spied on, you know, so it's in your right to know if that is happening.
You know, there are agreements that you have to read through. I mean, no one does.
Watching over you more and more and stuff, and where does it stop, and it's just the beginning, so it's a little bit worrying.
Just how much are you being tracked? Workers in Ontario are about to find out. Thanks to a new law, some employers have 1 month to tell employees if they're being monitored, which legally companies are allowed to do. Experts say transparency is a good first step.
Once we know what they are actually doing, then we'll have a better sense of whether those monitoring systems are breaching any other legislation.
Quebec, Alberta, and BC have privacy laws that set some limits on data collection. While Ontario's new rules require disclosure, they don't grant additional privacy rights.
It's not really penalizing employers for monitoring the employees, nor is it really preventing them from doing so.
With Time Doctor, you can easily track the workday activities of all your employees.
With more people working from home during the pandemic, more Canadian companies turn to these tools. Software like this can monitor how often you're typing, who you're video calling. It can even take screenshots of the websites you're on.
They want an understanding of what the user is doing when they're working remotely so they can assist them in being more productive.
There's some debate about whether tracking workers can be counterproductive, with workers who know they're being watched spending more time trying to game the system. Some experts say there's a better way.
You measure productivity on the basis of outputs rather than on monitoring and micromanaging them on all the seconds of their life.
Still, in a work-from-home world, workers may be faced with a trade-off, consenting to more monitoring if it means more flexibility. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, have you noticed that things at night may be a little more purple in Vancouver? Why the streetlights have taken on an unusual hue and what's being done about it. That's next.
I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
With the death of Queen Elizabeth and the coming coronation of King Charles III, people in Canada are asking, why do we pledge allegiance to the King to begin with? This is KN Explains, Canada and the Monarchy. Okay, first, the short answer. We pledge allegiance to King Charles because Canada is what's called a constitutional monarchy. So, what is that?
Well, the constitutional monarchy is our system of government where we have a head of state who's above party politics and is separate from the head of government, who is the prime minister. So the head of state is the monarch.
And the monarch right now is King Charles. Why, might you ask, is King Charles from England Canada's head of state? At one point in history, the British Empire was a quarter of the world's land. That meant there were British colonies all over the world, and the king or queen reigns over them. Now, colonialism is its own complex topic, and we'll need another Can Explains to really dig into it. Back to Canada, the colony. We're not a colony anymore, so why is the king still our head of state?
There's been a long transition for Canada from being part of this British Empire to being part of a Commonwealth.
Okay, Dr. Harris, let's pause right there. The Commonwealth?
Well, the Commonwealth consists of countries that mostly once belonged to the British Empire and are now independent countries. 15 of these countries are Commonwealth realms, where the monarch is head of state. So these are fully independent countries.
So King Charles is the head of state for these realms, but they run their own governments and make their own political decisions. Got it. But not every former colony wants the monarch to be their head of state, and some have walked away. So, what do Canadians want? According to a poll done by Angus Reid, the majority of Canadians no longer want to be a constitutional monarchy, aka ditch the king as head of state. The same poll found that the majority of Canadians find the royal family less relevant than they used to be.
One of the challenges is that in Canada, a lot of people don't think about the monarchy unless there's a big royal tour or a big royal event happening.
But it's not just boredom or lack of awareness. Colonialism has left a bitter taste for some Canadians as well. Indigenous peoples in particular have a complex relationship with the Crown.
Clearly the relationship between Canada and the Crown and Indigenous peoples isn't working.
But a lot of Canadians still want the king as our head of state.
I think that the historical ties are of interest to many Canadians. There's been personal admiration for Queen Elizabeth II, and there's the involvement of members of the royal family as honorary colonels-in-chief of Canadian military regiments or as patrons of Canadian charities.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Maybe we would be pledging allegiance to a flag instead of the king like in the US. But for now, we're going to keep doing what we are currently doing, and this guy will probably be in all of our money pretty soon. That's it for Can Explains. For CBC Kids News, I'm Ainara Aline.
Oh, when night falls these days, something a little strange begins to happen on the streets of Vancouver. They begin to glow purple. Our Susanna De Silva looks in to solve the mystery.
Like art, color, it seems, is in the eye of the beholder.
Black light-ish.
They're purple. definitely purple.
But it doesn't take much of an eye to see something looking a little different on some Vancouver streets.
It's like when you're driving on the highway and someone has those really obnoxious lights coming at you.
Why it's actually that way? Maybe it's like easier to see people crossing the street. I don't know.
See, I thought like they're experimenting something.
There is a simpler answer.
Because there is a coating on these fixtures that has failed.
In other words, a manufacturing defect. More than 100 have turned purple so far, but the city says they are still under warranty, so it won't cost taxpayers anything to fix them.
Our understanding is that they have identified and addressed the issue. We're not expecting to see this problem come up with the more recently installed sort of new generation lights.
But it's everywhere, right?
But it isn't just Vancouver. Manitoba Hydro says so far it has replaced close to 1,000 defective streetlights, with another 750 likely needing replacement. And it has also been seen all over the United States. And it turns out the LED's true color is what is shining through. This Canadian company manufactures a wide variety of LED fixtures, though not streetlights. But its president says at their base, no LEDs of any kind are just white. They only get that way with a yellow coating called phosphor.
Behind the white light, there's a blue or sort of purplish color, and they put this phosphor over it, and the phosphor then glows white.
LED technology is expected to save the city of Vancouver over $2.3 million a year in maintenance and power costs once all of its streetlights are converted. But some would like a few to stay purple.
I would actually be a little disappointed, honestly. I kind of like the change in the vibe.
Cool vibe or not, the city says the violet hues can't stay. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
Time to check in with Kuljeet Kaila for a look at the weather. Kuljeet, I have to say I was freezing outside today.
Earlier today?
Earlier today, yeah. I haven't been bringing my winter coat because it's been so hot, and today I needed it.
You need it in the morning hours, I'm finding, and by the afternoon it starts to get warm again. So do that. We are seeing lots of fog overnight. If you take a look at our system's forecast, the fog's rolling in overnight, but clearing nicely during the day, and that's because our high pressure system is back. We had a chilly day yesterday, and that's it. We're back to above seasonal temperatures, and of course that means the fire danger rating continues, especially for the Peace region. It has decreased for the Cariboo and down into the south coast. So just a bit of good news through there, but we did hit some hot spots across the province. 23 in Kamloops, 20 in Chilliwack, also in Kelowna, and that's about 4 to 5 degrees above seasonal temperatures. That's going to continue again tomorrow. Sunshine for all of BC except for Dease Lake. 40% chance of rain there tomorrow. Otherwise looking pretty nice. 21 for Kelowna tomorrow. Your 5-day forecast looks like this for Vancouver. This sunshine, this high pressure system is back. It's actually going to get even warmer by Thursday. Sunshine there. A little bit of clouds coming in for Friday, and then we're right back to 20 degrees and a sunny weekend ahead. Some clouds for Monday, and the big question everyone's asking, when are we going to see some rain? The only possibility is on Tuesday, and that's about a 40% risk of rain. Anita?
Kuljeet, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rapper Kanye West is suspended from both Twitter and Instagram after making anti-Semitic comments. As Lisa Shing tells us, West's suspension is opening up conversation around who controls speech online.
Kanye, what are you doing here today?
In recent years, Kanye West has earned a reputation less for his music and more for stirring controversy. The rapper, now legally known as Ye, has had his Instagram and Twitter accounts locked after making anti-Semitic posts.
I actually don't think it's an effective tool in terms of teaching people how to use their words and use their platforms.
Despite the suspension, his Twitter account is still active. He just can't post until it's lifted, which could be anywhere from 12 hours to a week.
They're not altruistic organizations, despite what they like to say in press releases. They are businesses that are driven off of clicks and eyeballs and ad revenue.
Twitter's guidelines say an account is locked when an otherwise healthy account is in the middle of an abusive episode.
When you hear about slavery for 400 years, that sounds like a choice.
Kanye West has a history of erratic behavior. In 2016, he was hospitalized and diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Since then, he's used social media to harass his former partner, Kim Kardashian,
You may not feel
direct racial slurs at comedian Trevor Noah, and earlier this month, wore a White Lives Matter t-shirt at Paris Fashion Week.
So if he's not at home on one of these platforms, he'll find a home on another.
What you doing in the club on a Thursday?
While some say he should be permanently banned, finding a home somewhere else could be dangerous.
The people that go to the new platform and expend the effort, they're usually the hardcore believers, and so they can kind of reinforce some of their idea that they're being persecuted or whatever.
Whatever the solution, it isn't easy. It's complicated by advocates who think free speech should include hate speech, like Elon Musk, who has publicly supported Kanye and is making a bid to buy Twitter, saying he'll relax restrictions if he takes over. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Angela Lansbury, star of crime series Murder, She Wrote, has died at the age of 96. The three-time Oscar nominee is being remembered for much more than just her TV work. Thomas Degla takes a look at her career and her little-known connection to Canada.
With a career spanning 8 decades, Angela Lansbury's early work came in black and white.
Life is war. Don't count the casualties.
She was born in London in 1925, and it was in a downtown Montreal nightclub that Lansbury made her stage debut, having to conceal that she was just 16.
Nobody ever asked me what age I was. It was a wonder that I even got across the border, truthfully.
You don't know what you've missed, sir.
Her rookie performance on screen in Gaslight in 1944 earned the first of 3 Academy Award nominations. She was careful not to be typecast.
I was a young character actress, and these days that word is a dirty word in our business, character actress.
Though she was often given the role of mother.
Why don't you pass the time by playing a little solitaire?
Like in 1962, cast in The Manchurian Candidate as Lawrence Harvey's mom, though she was only 3 years older than him. Lansbury wowed Broadway in Mame in 1966, winning her first Tony Award. Another 4 trophies would follow.
She was an extraordinary presence on stage. She knew how to draw your eye to her.
It was 80s TV that made her a household name, with the role of writer and sleuth Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote.
True as it can be.
Her voice became familiar to a new generation in the 90s, playing Mrs. Potts in Disney's Beauty and the Beast. While on stage, she kept performing into her 90s.
I'll probably pass away, with one hand, one hand on my script.
At age 96, Lansbury died at her Los Angeles home, her life dedicated to her craft until the end. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Can we build it without the instructions?
No.
2 Lower Mainland Lego enthusiasts are trying to take the brick world by storm. We meet these 2 would-be Lego masters next.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Driving down the eastern shore towards Ekum. The trees are tilted from Fiona, some wrapped up in lines, making restoration especially challenging.
Yeah, what a spectacular day.
Brian Pace lives in Ekum in this bright yellow house that his boat-building father made.
Day 10 without power, but it's been fantastic. Look at this view. Roasting.
And if 10 days without power is a hardship, you'd never know it.
Beautiful.
He's taken his backyard burn barrel and turned it into his outdoor stove.
Why don't I pull this out, flip this over. So only burn first thing in the morning, at dawn when there's dew, and this morning, frost.
If Fiona didn't dampen his spirit, certainly a little frost won't either. Seems when life gives you lemons, make not lemonade, but chartreux quiche.
Isn't that beautiful? This all started because, of course, I wanted hot food. I wanted real food. And so I roasted these carrots, not these ones, but carrots and parsnips together, and then took old wire that my dad had. And here I have mustard green.
He's invited some of his neighbors and friends for lunch.
Wash them in the rain barrel.
Well, whatever he does is delicious.
You can only turn them inside out once.
But there's more than just barrel gourmet cooking happening here. He has his wash on the line that he washed in his rain barrel. Inside, he's still whipping up sauces.
Running water in
No. I have a bucket of water, rainwater.
We're technically still in HRM.
HRM. There's
Even
no
though I'm 2 hours away.
Yes, there's no evidence of it. There's no sidewalks, there's nothing.
Is that where you're having your bath?
Yeah, do you want to come down and see the tub?
And at nighttime, after filling his old cast iron tub by the pond, he infuses that water with fall blossoms. He has a bath.
So salt and fresh water mixed together, beautiful for the complexion, and the sun warms it up.
He has cooked all kinds of things in this wood-fired barrel, by the way, including a lemon poppy seed cake.
This is the way you should live through a storm, don't you think?
I think.
But I'm ready to have power.
Yeah.
Colleen Jones, CBC News, Ekum.
Housing, safety, transportation, and climate change. What do the next 4 years look like? Who will win, and what will it mean for you and your family? Tune in to CBC News for in-depth analysis and context. Join me this Saturday as CBC News presents BC Votes, live commercial-free coverage of the municipal election starting at 7 p.m. Until then, get up to speed at cbc.ca/BCVotes. It's one of the hottest shows on television right now, Lego Masters. It's a show where Lego builders compete for a cash prize of $100,000 as well as a Lego Masters trophy. Now, for season 3, 2 of the competitors are from the Lower Mainland, and the brother-sister duo are confident they can win the top prize.
You don't like the tabs? I love the tabs. Like, they remind me of like old school.
Can we build it without the instructions?
No. What is Lego Masters, Emily?
Lego Masters is a show where the best in the country, and in this case North America, of Lego builders come on the show and try to compete for a chance to win $100,000 and a Lego Master trophy.
Like, there's the easy things like bricks and plates and round bricks and Technic bricks, tiles,
Technic pins.
Then you get other things like AFOL, AFOL, it's an adult fan of Lego. In season 3, they reached out to me and said, hey, we want you for season 3. We can definitely do Canadians this time, because I asked that twice. Then I just had to find a partner. And I got stuck with her. Where are we?
I'm going to do this, you do that.
Okay, well, I can't do the...
I think you can.
If it continues like this, I don't think we got much of a chance, but if we can pull it together the next couple of weeks, then I think we got a good chance of winning this thing.
Did you do that part?
No, not yet.
I'm 2 years younger than David.
That's right.
So...
Despite we look like twins, but we're not. Yeah, she's younger than me, but when she was born, my parents stuck a bucket of Lego in front of me and said, go play in the corner, and I never stopped. This structural stage of this spaceship, I think it's important to not have missing pieces. Yeah, so when I was looking for a partner for the show, it's like, I need someone who builds fast. And who built all my Lego nerd friends? This guy.
And I'm also a really fast builder. I have small hands, and I don't have a hard time picking up the really tiny pieces and getting them into place.
Okay, so something that I want to make sure before we move forward on this one. Now I've got 2 almost 2.5-year-olds. And they love Lego. They play with Duplo. We got a big bucket down here. We got a Duplo up in their cribs upstairs, and it's their favorite thing.
For me, the most interesting part about the show was the bonds that we made with the people there.
Yeah.
Have never seen Lego Masters? Might have to give it a try. Good luck to you from the Lower Mainland. Okay, the Wellington Zoo in New Zealand has experienced a population explosion among its ring-tailed lemurs with the recent arrival of 4 sets of twins.
This is Zeus, the father, has done his job. And to be honest, he has a tough job because he only has a 24 to 36 hour window while they're in that season, and they only breed once a year. So he got around very well.
Okay, the baby boom has doubled the zoo's population of the endangered lemurs. The lemur pups were born to 4 different females, all of them first-time mothers. Yes, he sure does get around. The first set of twins arrived in August, and the most recent were delivered last week. Lemurs are native to Madagascar, and their population has been declining in the wild. They are listed as endangered. Sort of a cross between a mouse and a fox, I guess, the way they kind of look. Fun fact, lemurs are the world's oldest living primates, also one of the only primates that can have blue eyes, other than humans, of course. Clearly, you can see I've sort of gone down the lemur rabbit hole, but that is it. I'll spare you with the lemur facts. That's it for our show as well. We do leave you tonight, hoping to see you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching.